Hello, welcome to this video. In this video, what I'm going to show you is how to use Excel to solve for multiple internal rate of return problems. Now let's first take a look at this hypothetical cash flow. So suppose we have a sequence of cash flow that will require you to pay $100 at the time 0, which means now, and you will receive $230 in time 1, or say year 1, and you will need to pay $132 in year 2 or time 2. So this is so-called a non-conventional cash flow because the direction of the cash flow switched for more than one time, right? Because it switched from negative to positive and then switched from positive to negative one more time. So hypothetically, for this cash flow, we will have up to two internal rate of returns. So how are we going to let the Excel to help us find those? Now here's the deal. Now before I start, I want to let you first to have an idea about the Npv profile of this sequence of cash flow. In other words, we want to have a plot to show, given different discount rate, what is the Npv of this sequence of cash flow. Because this will help us later. The reason is because the IRR is actually the intersection point between the Npv profile and the x-axis. So having a plot in front of us will help us better to solve this issue. Now here I'm laying out a table and I want to use this table to let Excel to tell me different sort of Npv given different discount rate that I input, so that later I can draw a plot out of it. Now first of all, let's define an area of discount rate. So let's start from the 0% and then make an increment of 2 percentage points all the way through, let's say, 30%. And then use the Npv function in Excel to help us find out what is the net present value of the sequence of the cash flow given the discount rate that is defined over here. Notice that for Excel, the Npv function is not sort of very intuitive in a way that we would otherwise think about Npv. So here is something that you need to pay attention to. Now, first of all, the very first parameter in this function is so-called a rate, and this is just the discount rate, so no problem with that. But the next sort of the parameter is going to be the values, and those values of course are going to be your cash flow. However, keep in mind, in Excel it will recognize your very first cash flow being the cash flow one period from today, not today. Okay, so this is something different than what you would otherwise do with your financial calculator, so be sure that you know that. Now with that being said, as we are selecting our cash flow, we need to start from year 1 or time 1 and then drag all the way to the last cash flow in the sequence. So we will have two cash flows right here. Okay. However, this is not the end because the Npv function for the Excel will tell us what is the sort of the present value of the sequence of cash flow starting from one period in the future. However, for the conventional meaning of Npv, it really should include the present, should include the cash flow that will happen today. So what we need to do is to manually adjust that by adding back the very first cash flow, or say the cash flow for now, back to this equation. Okay, so with that being laid out, you will find out the net present value of this sequence of cash flow at a discount rate being 0% is negative $2. Okay, so we are supposed to be able to drag down to find out the rest of things. However, before you do, you really need to make sure that your formulas are being set up correctly. Okay, so we need to make sure that as we move from one cell to the next cell, so on and so forth, the only thing that would change in this formula is the discount rate, and nothing else should be changed. So that's why we need to fix the array of cash flows, okay, by adding dollar signs before the column letter and the row number. And the shortcut for doing that is just to press your F4 key on your keyboard. And here the same thing, okay? So C7 is the initial cash flow, and we also want to fix it. All right, so once this is done, we can simply just drag down the thing so that it will lay out all different kind of net present value given different discount rate for our sequence of cash flow. All right, now next, we want to utilize this table to have Excel plot an Npv profile for us so that we will have a better idea what happens to our Npv given different sort of discount rates. So what you can do is first select the data that you want to use to draw a plot, and then click on Insert. Okay, and here you can click on this is a line chart. Okay, and then you can select the one that you think is most appropriate for your purpose. Okay, so I think this graph would work. Okay, so let's click on OK, and then this is sort of the Npv profile that we are looking at. All right, now let's take a look at this graph. Okay, so first of all, it's a concave. Okay, and second, it has intersection point with the x-axis, which is right here, okay, for 2 times. And that indicates that we will definitely have 2 internal rate of returns being calculated for this sequence of cash flow, simply because this blue line intersects with the x-axis for 2 times. Okay, each time would mean at this particular point of discount rate, this is going to be an internal rate of return, and at this another intersection point, that's going to be another internal rate of return. Okay, now next our job is to simply figure out what are these 2 internal rate of returns. Now first we're going to go with the sort of the easier way, okay, simply by utilizing the IRR function of Excel. Okay, now to use the Excel's IRR or internal rate of return function, you simply press equal sign and then type IRR, and it will pop up this little sort of prompt. And then what you're going to do is simply to tell Excel what is your sequence of cash flow that you want it to solve for internal rate of return. Okay. Now, for internal rate of return, you definitely should start with time 0 cash flow and then go all the way to the end of your cash flow sequence. So in this particular case, it's simply C7 to C9 because we do have 3 different cash flows in our case. Now, if you just press the close parenthesis sign and press enter, it will definitely tell you what is the internal rate of return of this cash sequence of cash flow. However, this is just one of those. Okay, it will never tell you the other one without you doing something else. Okay, now here is the tricky part. To have Excel tell you different sort of internal rate of returns, you definitely need to tell Excel something more about it. Okay, so let's click on the function little button so that we can let Excel to display this function argument. Okay, so what happens here is that we need to type something in the guess so that Excel will have a better idea like in what sort of range that it needs to find out an internal rate of return for. Okay, now by default this guess is 0.1, which means Excel will try to find an internal rate of return in the range that is around 10%. Okay, so this works very well for our first number because first number just happens to be 10%. But for the second IRR, we definitely need Excel to do something else by searching a number that is not in the range of 10%. So that's why we need to tell Excel what is the guess parameter that we want it to try. And in this case, let's do, because it looks like this number is somewhere between 20 or maybe 19, I don't know. But so let's just type a number so that Excel will have a better idea where to find that another internal rate of return. So let's do 0.18, okay, which means 18%. All right, so once you have told Excel that, okay, I want you to find a number around like 18%. Well, instantaneously, Excel will tell you, okay, I got it. The number is actually 20%. So that's the other internal rate of return number that we are trying to find out. Okay. All right, so this is the first method to find out internal rate of return. But I think it's, before you can make sure that you have a good guess, it will be better if you can draw out a profile. However, without drawing out a profile, I think as long as you know there are gonna be two, probably what people are typically can do is you simply make the first guess, let's say it's around a 0, okay, and the second one you can guess it as, okay, how about let's say 99%, okay. So you can make this guess very kind of in a very broad range, okay. But anyway, as long as you can finally let Excel find out two numbers, it really doesn't have to be a very precise sort of guess, because it's a guess. It doesn't have to be very precise. All right. Now, next, what I want to show you is you can sort of use the go-seek function in Excel to serve the same purpose. Okay, but still, we need to do some sort of setup. Okay, so here's the deal. Now, by definition, internal rate of return is a discount rate that can make a sequence of cash flows net present value to be equal to 0, right? So the idea here of using method 2, using go-seek, is just to let Excel help you to find out that discount rate that will eventually bring your NPV to 0. Okay, so we still need to do some setup, as I said. So the idea here is that you need to have a cell that is used to indicate your discount rate, and also another cell that is used to display the calculated NPV. Okay, so let's suppose now we just take a 2% and utilize this E31 to calculate the NPV along with your cash flows that we have figured out, we have assumed to be the case earlier. Okay, now once again you use the Npv function and define that rate being E31, and once again the value should start from year 1, okay, till the end, and then add back your year 0 value. Okay, so this is the NPV that we found out given the discount rate, but of course this is not the discount rate that we are looking for, because it does not bring NPV to 0. So how to do that? Now, what you're going to do is to use the go-seek function in your what if analysis button. Okay, so click on go-seek, right? And then the first blank you need to put in is like what is your like where your goal is located. Okay, and in this case, our goal is simply to make NPV equal to 0. So we want to set this cell to the value of 0 by changing this cell. Okay, so it's like we want to bring F31 to 0 by changing the value in E31, and then you ask Excel to calculate this thing for you. Okay, all right. Excel found out a solution, and that happens to be 9.992%, and this can sort of bring the NPV to sort of close to 0, but not exactly 0. Okay, so this is simply the way that Excel works. Okay, it's not like a perfect, but sort of give you an idea. Now, this is the first value, right? We still want to find out the second value. So what you want to do is, give Excel a starting point in this goal-seeking array. Okay, so let's say we can, type in a number, let's say 18%. Okay, and then still do the same thing. Okay, goal-seek and F31 to 0 by changing E31, and then press OK. All right, now the Excel tells you, okay, given that a starting point of being 18%, I found out another solution, which is 20. And if your discount rate is 20%, your NPV will once again be very, very close to 0. Okay. All right, so these are the two approaches that I'm trying to introduce you so that you know how to find out multiple internal rate of returns in Excel. Hope this helps, and see you next time.